Jai Hind students, welcome to my YouTube channel. Students, happiness, yes, happiness is a choice, not a result. Nothing will make you happy until you choose to be happy. No person actually will make you happy unless you decide to be happy. So basically, your happiness will not come to you. It can only come from within you. Yes, happiness can only come from you.
With that positive note, students, let's begin today's session. Today, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic of conservative forces and non-conservative forces. Students, a force is said to be conservative if the work done by the force in moving a body between any 2 points is independent of the path followed, and it depends only on the initial and final position. We will prove it quantitatively that the gravitational force is of conservative force, right? In order to do so, what we'll consider is, we'll consider an object of mass m, right? And which is to be moved against gravity through a height h, from its initial position A, to the final position B, right? A is the initial position, B is the final position. And it can be done by various ways. These are the three different ways, right? In the first case, the object is being moved vertically upward, right? In the second case, the object is moved along a series of vertical and horizontal paths, right? And in case 3, the object is moved along an inclined plane, right? What we'll prove is, that the work done in moving an object against gravity depends only on the initial and the final position. That is, it depends only on A and B. And it does not depend upon the nature of the path followed. It is a vertical path, it is a stair-like path, and it is an inclined path, right? So, work done against the gravity in making the body to move between 2 points depends only on the initial and the final position and is independent of the path followed. Such a force is known as a conservative force, right? So basically it does not matter what path is taken. Work done to move a body between any two given points in a vertical plane is equal to the work done against gravity through the vertical distance between the points. So that is what we are going to prove, right? Let's consider case 1. In this case, the object is being moved vertically upward through height h. Now, to move the body from point A to B, a force mg equal to the weight of the body has to be applied, isn't it? Suppose this is the body. So its weight is obviously mg. So in order to make the body move vertically upward, force equal to its weight is to be applied, right, along the vertically upward direction. Now here, in the first case, the work done is given by the scalar product of force and displacement. This we are aware of. Now the angle between the force and the displacement h, it is 0 degree. So it will be f h cos 0. Cos 0 is 1. And the force is equal in magnitude to the weight of the body. It has to be applied over a distance h, right? Hence, work done would be mgh. Cos 0 is 1. So in the first case, in order to move the object vertically upward, the amount of work required is mgh. This is in case 1, right? Now consider case 2. Here the object is moved along a series of vertical and horizontal paths, right? These are the vertical paths and these are the horizontal sections. They both will constitute a stair-like path, right? Suppose its height is h1. The height of this vertical section is h2, this is h3, and this is h4. and the sum of these vertical paths would amount to total height, that is h, isn't it? So in this case, the object is moved along a series of vertical and horizontal paths. Now we are aware, students, no work is done along the horizontal path. The work done in making the body to move along the horizontal sections would be 0, because in that case angle theta is 90 degree, so work done is 0. And total work done from A to B thus will be equal to the sum of works done along these vertical steps or along these vertical paths, isn't it? So total amount of work done in the second case would be equal to work done in making the body to move through this vertical path plus work done in making the body to move through another vertical path of height h2 plus w3 plus w4, right? And along the horizontal path the work done would be 0. So net work done in making the body to move from A to B through a total height h would be mgh1 plus mgh2 plus mgh3 plus mgh4. So what we get is mg can be taken as common. So we are left with h1 plus h2 plus h3 plus h4. And the sum of these heights would be equal to the total height. So what we get is mgh, right? So as we can see, the work done in making the body to move from point A to point B through vertical height h in both the cases is found to be same, each being equal to mgh, right? Now let's consider the third case. Here the same body of mass small m is to be moved along the inclined plane, suppose of length L, right? Height is h, same height. So let us consider the vector diagram now. Suppose the body at an instant is over here. So what are the forces acting on it? So one is its weight, which will be obviously mg. Now this weight, it can be resolved into two components, isn't it? One, oppositional reaction, that is perpendicular to the inclined plane. Obviously this angle would be theta. So this component is mg cos theta, while the other component down the inclined plane, this is mg sin theta. And obviously this will be the reaction force. It will always act perpendicular to the surface, in this case the inclined plane over which the body is placed, isn't it? R is balanced by mg cos theta. So this body is to be moved from A to B along the inclined plane against this force, isn't it? So this is the force to be applied, and it should be equal to mg sin theta, right? So again I repeat, students, in the third case the object is moved along inclined plane of length L and inclination theta. Here the work will be done against the component mg sin theta of the weight, and the work done would be equal to scalar product of force and displacement. So here this is the applied force, which is F vector dot S vector. So what is F? It is mg sin theta. S is from this to this point, the total displacement is L. And what is the angle between mg sin theta and L? It is 0. So cos 0 is 1, right? So what we get is mgl sin theta, which in turn will give us mgl. Consider this right angled triangle, isn't it? Consider this right angled triangle. Its height is h. So sin theta would be perpendicular by hypotenuse, that is h by L. So what we get is L get cancelled. So work done in the third case is also found to be mgh. Clear, students? So basically, we have proved that the work done in moving an object against gravity depends only on the initial and the final position, right? And it does not depend upon the nature of the path followed. In all the three cases, the amount of work done is found to be same, each being equal to mgh. Hence, we have proved that gravitational force is of conservative nature. So again, let us discuss the definition of conservative force. A force is said to be conservative if work done by or against the force in moving a body depends only on the initial and the final position and is independent of the path followed. Here it is immaterial whether the body is to be moved from A to B along a vertical path, along a stair-like path, or along the inclined path. In all the three cases, the amount of work done is proved to be same. So, gravitational force is of conservative nature. Students, we have already proved that gravitational force is of conservative nature for the three paths which we have considered earlier, right? Now let us again mathematically prove that gravitational force is of conservative nature by considering any arbitrary path. For that, let us consider this to be the earth of mass m and a body, say, of mass small m is to be moved from A to B, right? So, following any arbitrary path, it can be a straight vertical path, it can be any arbitrary path. A and B are the initial and the final positions respectively. So the amount of work done in making the body to move from A to B against the force of gravity due to the earth, that is to be found, right? So for that, the small amount of work done in making the body to move from Q to P through small distance dx, that can be written as the scalar product of force and displacement, isn't it? Here, the force is, I'm talking about the gravitational force. It is G capital M small m divided by x square, isn't it? Therefore, small amount of work done in moving the body through infinitely small distance dx would be given by G capital M small m x square into dx, isn't it? Therefore, students, total amount of work done in making the body to move from A to B following any arbitrary path, it would be given by integration of dw, and the limits would be from Ra to Rb. Distance is to be measured from the center of the earth. So limits would be from Ra to Rb. So now let's try to solve it. So substitute the value of dw. What we get is G capital M small m divided by x square into dx. The constant, it can be taken outside the integration. So we get 1 by x square dx, and limits would be from Ra to Rb. And students, we are aware integration of 1 by x square with respect to x is minus 1 by x. So therefore, work done, it is equal to G capital M small m. It is minus 1 by x. Limits would be from Ra to Rb, right? So minus can be taken outside. The upper limit minus lower limit, that is 1 by Rb minus 1 by Ra. It can further be rearranged in this manner. G capital M small m, in order to nullify this negative sign, these two terms may be interchanged. So we get 1 by Ra minus 1 by Rb. So students, this is the expression for the amount of work done against the gravity in making the body to move from point A to point B following any arbitrary path, right? So what we have derived is the amount of work done in making the body to move between any two given points. It is dependent only on the initial and final position and is independent of the path followed. Whether we follow this path, this is path 1, whether we tend to move the body from A to B following this path, this is suppose path 2, and if we move the body from A to B following this path, suppose this is path 3, or for that matter any other path, in all the cases, whether we make the body to move from A to B following path 1 or following path 2 or following path 3, in all the 3 cases the work done, it depends only on the initial, that is point A, and the final position, that is point B. So in all the 3 cases the work done will remain same. So what we have proved is the work done against the gravitational force in moving the body between the 2 given points depends only on the initial and the final position and is independent of the path followed. It doesn't depend upon the path, right? It does not matter what path is taken. Work done to move a body between any 2 points in a vertical plane is always constant. So that's the mathematical verification of the fact that gravitational force is of conservative nature. Now students, let us consider that the mass m is moved from, suppose this is point A, this is point B, this is the position vector RA and this is the position vector RB. Let us consider the mass m is moved from point A to point B along path 1. Suppose this is path 1, any path, right? And then from point B to point A along path 2. Suppose this is path 2. Again I repeat students, we have considered that the mass small m is moved from A to B along path 1 and then from B to A along path 2. Now since work done in moving the mass m between any 2 points A and B is independent of the path followed, therefore work done depends only on distances RA and RB, isn't it? So work done in moving the body from A to B along path 1, it must be equal to the work done in making the body to move from A to B along path 2. Just now we have proved it is independent of the path. So whether the body is moved from A to B along path 1 or A to B along path 2, in both the cases the work done would be same. Now students, WAB along path 2 would be equal to the negative of WBA along path 2, isn't it? That is, if the work is done by the gravitational force in making the body to move along the path 2, then an equal amount of work will have to be done against the gravitational force in moving the mass m from B to A along the same path. That is, work done in making the body to move from A to B along path 2, it must be equal to negative of the work done in making the body to move from B to A along the same path, along path 2. So from these two equations, from 1 and 2, what we conclude is WAB along path 1 is equal to minus WBA along path 2. Isn't it? This is verified. Or students, rearrange the terms. WAB along path 1. On taking this term in the left hand side, this negative sign will get changed to positive sign. It is equal to 0. That is, students, what we have proved is the work done in moving the mass m under the effect of gravitational force along a closed path A to B and B to A, that makes the path closed one, is always zero, isn't it? So the work done by the gravitational force or against the gravitational force in making a body to move along a cyclic path, cyclic or a closed path, is always zero. Clear, students? So a force is said to be conservative if the work done by the force in moving a particle along a closed path is zero. So I'll write down the conclusion over here. So a force is said to be conservative if the work done by the force in moving a body along a closed path, along a closed or cyclic path, is zero. This is a very important concept, right? This is what we have proved over here. The work done in making the body to move from A to B and from B to A, that is along a cyclic path or a closed path, is zero. This is what we have proved over here. So students, now let us discuss some properties of conservative forces which we have quantitatively or mathematically proved, isn't it? So first property is work done by or against a conservative force depends only and only on the initial and the final positions of the body. Clear? Second is work done by or against a conservative force, it does not depend upon the nature of the path between the initial and the final positions of the body. So we have discussed, students, it is immaterial whether the body is moved between any 2 points by following a vertical path, by following a stair-like path, by following an inclined path, or by any arbitrary path. The work done in making a body to move by or against a conservative force between any 2 given points depends only and only on the initial and the final position and is independent of the path followed. And the third property, students, which is very important one, the work done by or against a conservative force in a round trip, that is along a cyclic path, is always zero. So this has also been mathematically justified and verified, right? Now let's list some examples of conservative forces. As we have proved that gravitational force is of conservative nature. So gravitational force, it is of conservative nature. Second, students, electrostatic force. It is the force that exists between the two charges at rest. Electrostatic force. It can be either attractive or repulsive, right? So electrostatic force is the force that exists between two static charges. Then magnetic force. It is also found to be of conservative nature. Magnetic force. It exists between the two magnetic poles, north and south pole. We are aware like poles, they tend to repel each other while unlike poles tend to attract each other. So these are some of the examples of conservative forces. Here I would like to mention some common properties between these three. Each of these forces, students, obey inverse square law. They all obey inverse square law. That is, the magnitude of the gravitational force or the electrostatic force or the magnetic force varies inversely as the square of the distance between the two material bodies in the case of gravitational force, between two static charges in the case of electrostatic force, and between two magnetic poles in the case of magnetic force. So this is a very important property of conservative force. conservative force obey inverse square law, right? That is, it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the two bodies under consideration. Second is, students, it is a central force. It is a central force. It is a central force. Central force means, suppose these are the two bodies and these are the centers of the two bodies under consideration. And this is the line joining the center of the two bodies, right? So, if you are talking about gravitational force, then these two are the material bodies, right? If you are talking about electrostatic force, then these two must be charged bodies. And if you are talking about magnetic force, then these two must be having poles, magnetic poles, isn't it? So, the force between these two, they are found to form action-reaction pair, and also they always act along the line joining the center of the two bodies under consideration. Such forces are known as central forces, right? So, conservative forces obey inverse square law, and also they are central forces. That is, they tend to act along the line joining the center of the two bodies. And obviously, they form action-reaction pair. Students, let us discuss about non-conservative forces. Now, a force is said to be non-conservative if the work done by or against the force in moving a body depends upon the path between the initial and the final positions. So basically, the frictional forces, they are non-conservative forces. This is because the work done against friction does depend on the length of the path along which a body is moved. It does not depend only on the initial and final positions, but it also depends upon the length of the path which the body follows. So, a force is said to be non-conservative if the work done by or against the force in moving a body depends upon the path. It depends upon the nature of the path between the two given points, right? So, some examples of non-conservative forces are, as I've stated, frictional force. So, frictional forces are non-conservative nature. Then, obviously, like air resistance, it's also sort of frictional force only. Air resistance. Then solid friction, which exists between the two solid surfaces when in contact, right? Then viscous force. It is a frictional force that comes in the case of fluid. So viscous force. All are the forces, these all are the forces which are of retarding nature. So basically, what we have discussed is non-conservative forces. In this case, work done depends upon the path, right? For non-conservative forces, work done, it depends upon the path. It depends upon the nature of the path. Second is, work done in a round trip is not zero. Work done in a cyclic path or a round trip, that is a cyclic path, is non-zero or not zero. The non-conservative forces are also found to be velocity dependent and retarding in nature. And another very important property is, students, in the case of non-conservative forces, the work done is not completely recoverable. As I've told you, some of the work done or some of the energy, it gets dissipated as heat. The work done against a non-conservative force may be dissipated in the form of heat energy. So work done is not completely recoverable. And also non-conservative forces are found to be non-central forces and they do not obey inverse square law. So students, I hope you have understood the concept related to conservative forces, non-conservative forces and various properties associated with them. So that's it for this particular session, students. And do revise these topics thoroughly and do join me in my next lecture then. Till then, bye bye, and do take very good care of yourself. Thank you.